The world slowed down in that moment. I heard the wheels screeching, squealing, really scraping against the sidewalk with a terrible high-pitched sound. My daughter, Lily, was rolling downhill fast. Too fast. Her arms flailed, trying to grab something, anything, but there was nothing but the steep concrete path and gravity pulling her toward the traffic at the bottom of the hill. My heart didn't just skip, it stopped, and then it roared back to life with a surge of panic that made my legs move before my mind could catch up. "Lily!" I shouted, tearing down the slope after her. My voice cracked with fear, but she couldn't stop. The brakes, her wheelchair brakes, weren't working. I saw her tiny fingers reach for the handles, twisting and twisting to no effect. The wheelchair just kept accelerating, her eyes wide with terror. For a second, the sun caught her tear-streaked face, and I swear time froze. That's when I saw her. Karen. She was standing calmly on her porch, arms crossed, watching, not reacting, not moving, just watching. Like it was entertainment. Like it was exactly what she had expected. I kept running, lungs burning, legs pumping, the sound of rushing cars below rising in my ears. And then, by some miracle, Lily hit a patch of uneven pavement and the wheelchair slowed. Just enough. I lunged forward, grabbing the handles, nearly tripping over myself as I forced the chair to a stop. We were 3 feet from the edge of the road. Lily burst into tears, clinging to me, trembling like a leaf. I could barely hold her and keep the chair balanced. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream. But more than anything, I wanted answers. Because this wasn't just an accident. This was deliberate. I checked the brakes. The cables weren't loose. They weren't worn. They were cut, clean, precise, and unmistakable. No fraying, no snap. Snipped. With intention. My mind flashed through the last few days. The HOA letters. The warning about her ramp being a visual disruption. The confrontation at the mailbox when Karen told me, maybe this neighborhood just isn't the right fit for situations like yours. Situations like yours. That's what she called my daughter's disability. I looked back up at Karen. She hadn't moved an inch, still standing there, sipping from her glass like it was just another sunny afternoon. No shock, no concern, just that smug little smile on her lips, the kind that makes your skin crawl. My hands trembled as I held Lily closer. But in that moment, something in me hardened. This wasn't over. Not even close. People talk about monsters like they're creatures in the dark. But the real ones live in daylight. They sit on HOA boards. They smile while they sabotage. They hide their cruelty behind rules and regulations. And sometimes they cut the brakes on a child's wheelchair to make a point. That was the day I realized we weren't just dealing with a difficult neighbor. We were dealing with someone far more dangerous, someone who didn't just want us gone. She wanted to teach us a lesson, and I had no idea how far she was willing to go to make sure we learned it. But I was about to find out. What kind of person does this to a child in a wheelchair? We moved to Willow Creek Estates 2 months before the incident on a hopeful Saturday morning in early spring. The sky was unusually clear, and for the first time in months, it felt like life might be returning to normal, whatever that meant anymore. My wife had passed away the year before after a long, grueling battle with breast cancer. I was still reeling, not just from the loss, but from the silence it left behind, the kind that wraps around you and squeezes when a house goes quiet at night. The only thing that kept me grounded was my daughter, Lily. She was 8, curious, sweet, and way too brave for her own good. And she had been in a wheelchair since the accident 2 years ago. We were driving home from a weekend visit to her grandma's when a drunk driver blew through a red light and hit us head on. I walked away with a broken collarbone. Lily didn't walk away at all. The spinal injury changed everything. Hospitals became our second home. Physical therapy, surgeries, specialists, the works. But despite it all, she never lost that spark in her eyes. The one that said she still believed in the world. I don't know how she did it. I was angry, bitter, but she still believed people were good. That's what made me want to move. We needed a fresh start, A place with safe streets, smiling neighbors, maybe even a lemonade stand or two. Willow Creek Estates looked like something out of a real estate fantasy. White picket fences, well-trimmed hedges, a friendly community pool, and a park at the center of the block. Family-friendly, the brochure said. Peaceful. Orderly. I thought that was exactly what we needed. But peace, I've learned, can sometimes be a polished disguise for control. And order, when left unchecked, can become tyranny in a beige pantsuit. That was Karen. We met her the day we moved in. She was waiting for us before the U-Haul even pulled into the driveway. Blonde bob, pressed polo shirt, clipboard in hand. She introduced herself as Karen Whitmore, president of the Willow Creek HOA. Her voice was chirpy, almost mechanical, and her handshake was firm like she was measuring something in her head. She looked over my shoulder at the truck and gave a small smile. We just like to make sure everything stays clean and efficient around here. If you need help understanding the HOA guidelines, I'm your go-to. She handed me a laminated copy like it was the Constitution. I thanked her politely. Lily, sitting in her wheelchair beside me, gave her a small wave. Karen hesitated. She smiled at Lily, but it was tight, uncomfortable. Forced, her eyes darted down to the chair and then quickly back up. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I remembered it later. That first week was a blur of boxes, cables, assembling furniture, and showing Lily her new room. She loved it. We painted the walls her favorite color, a soft seafoam green, and hung fairy lights around the window. I even installed a little portable ramp outside the front door so she could get to the sidewalk without needing me every time. It wasn't a huge modification, just a lightweight aluminum ramp, something safe and temporary until we made more permanent adjustments. But within 3 days, I got my first notice. Ramp installation not pre-approved by HOA. In bold, red letters, taped to our front door. I thought it was a mistake. I called Karen. She told me in her most cheerful tone that any structural or visual modifications to the exterior of the home must be submitted to the HOA Architectural Committee for approval at least 2 weeks in advance. I explained it was a wheelchair ramp, that my daughter needed it for daily mobility, that it wasn't permanent and barely visible from the street. She sighed. I understand, but it sets a precedent, and if we make exceptions, things start to get messy. Messy. Lily was in the kitchen listening when I hung up. She didn't say anything, but I could see it in her face. The way her eyes fell to her lap, the way she bit her lip to keep from asking the obvious question. Do they not want us here? I lied to her. I said it was just paperwork, that everything would be fine. But it wasn't fine. Over the next few weeks, the notes kept coming. Our trash cans were left out too long. Lily's flower pot collection on the porch was unsightly. I got a violation for letting her sidewalk chalk drawings stretch too far onto the public curb. One time, she accidentally left a book on the front step, and Karen personally rang the bell to inform us that clutter could be seen from the street. She never said it outright. She didn't have to. Everything about her screamed, "This is not your kind of neighborhood." Still, I tried to be civil. I attended the monthly HOA meeting, introduced myself to other neighbors. Most smiled politely, but there was a stiffness behind their greetings, the kind that said, "We've heard about you." I couldn't prove it, but I knew Karen was saying things behind closed doors, subtle things, like how we were bringing in unnecessary complexity to the community, or how kids should be playing, not being rolled around on ramps like some hospital. It boiled beneath the surface like a hidden sickness. And the worst part, Lily noticed. No matter how many bedtime stories I read or cartoons I queued up to distract her, she started pulling away. She didn't want to go outside anymore. She stopped waving at neighbors. One day, I found her trying to scoot herself across the living room floor without the wheelchair. "Why are you doing that?" I asked, heart aching. She looked up at me and whispered, "Maybe if I don't need the chair, they'll like us more." That crushed me. Absolutely crushed me. So I filed an official appeal with the HOA. I sent medical documentation, photos, Even offered to replace the ramp with a more aesthetically pleasing one. No response. Then came the next incident. I found our recycling bin overturned, papers scattered in the street. Someone had scribbled ramp trash across a piece of mail. At first, I thought it was random vandalism. Kids maybe. But then I checked the doorbell camera. It was turned off. Not disconnected, powered off. Only one person had been vocal about us installing any electronics outside, Karen. She claimed the HOA frowned on exterior surveillance that wasn't community approved. I had ignored that warning like any sane person would. But now I began to wonder if she had found a way to disable it. Or worse, if she had help. I tried to keep Lily shielded from it all. We read Harry Potter at night, baked muffins on weekends, planted sunflowers in the backyard. She smiled when we were alone. But every time she wheeled past a window and saw Karen pruning her roses or chatting with a neighbor, her shoulders tensed. She was 8, but she was learning something terrible, that sometimes adults choose cruelty dressed as civility. I almost pulled the plug and sold the house. I thought about it every night. But Lily had just started school nearby. She had a kind teacher, a gentle bus driver, and even a friend in her art class. I couldn't uproot her again. Not so soon. And besides, I refused to be run out. Not by a woman whose power stemmed from rules about porch colors and mailbox heights. But I never expected it would go further than notes and insults. I never imagined someone would actually hurt a child to prove a point. Until the day the brakes failed. It began with silence. The kind that seeps in slowly, like fog creeping under a door. The day after the recycling incident, none of the neighbors looked me in the eye. Not when I waved. Not when I tried to chat while collecting mail. Not even when Lily dropped her backpack on the sidewalk and needed help. People just walked around us, like we were invisible or radioactive. Karen, on the other hand, became even more visible. She started taking her morning walks past our house twice a day, clipboard in hand, phone always raised like she was documenting something. I could hear her muttering into it sometimes, non-compliant front lawn, poor edging, improper use of exterior utility box. I caught her one morning taking a photo of our ramp. Not with her phone, with a DSLR camera, long lens, and all. She claimed it was for the next HOA newsletter to show residents what not to do. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was a campaign. It wasn't long before Lily became the next target. She had made a friend at school, Sophie, sweet girl, always brought Lily small crafts from class. One weekend, we invited her over for playdate. Her mother, Ms. Anderson, agreed and dropped her off with a smile. The girls painted birdhouses, made cupcakes, laughed until their cheeks hurt. But Monday morning, Sophie didn't sit next to Lily on the bus. She wouldn't even meet her eyes. Lily came home quiet, confused. 2 days later, I saw Ms. Anderson at the grocery store. She gave me a polite, forced smile, then looked down quickly. I approached her, gently asked if everything was all right. She hesitated, then mumbled. Karen mentioned there were safety concerns, that your home might not be suited for playdates. I was stunned. Safety concerns? We had safety rails, ramps, padded corners. My daughter's disability had made our home more prepared, not less. But I knew what Karen had said. I knew the kind of seed she could plant with a whisper. If something happens to your daughter in his house, there's no official oversight. From that point on, Lily had no visitors, no invitations. Her birthday came and went with only me and a cake. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. That's what scared me most. Her light was dimming. I tried speaking up, posting politely in the neighborhood Facebook group. I asked if anyone else had experienced issues with excessive HOA rules. I didn't name Karen, but within 10 minutes, my post was removed. I got a private message from Karen herself, just a reminder. The HOA group is for positive engagement, not complaints. If you have a grievance, please submit it through proper channels. That same night, someone poured dish soap all over our front ramp. Lily almost slipped the next morning. I cleaned it up before she saw, trying to keep calm. But something shifted in me that day. This wasn't mischief. It was precision. Someone had targeted the one place my daughter needed to feel safe, her path to the world. Then came the dog incident. Our neighbor, Mr. Jensen, owned a golden retriever named Max Sweet, lazy dog who barely barked. One afternoon, Lily was coming home from school when Max, unleashed, charged at her, barking, growling, foam dripping from his mouth like he'd been provoked. She screamed. I ran outside just in time to block the dog with a push broom. It didn't bite her, thank God, but it knocked over her wheelchair and scratched her arm. Jensen was shocked, apologized profusely, said Max had never acted that way before. He offered to pay for anything broken. But Karen? She was standing 3 houses down, arms folded. Later, I discovered that someone had been feeding Max raw meat, laced with cayenne pepper. The vet confirmed it. It had made the dog erratic, aggressive. It had to have come from someone close. You know who I suspected, but I had no proof. I called a meeting with the HOA board. I documented everything. Dates, photos, timestamps. I showed the warning letters, the slippery ramp incident, the surveillance being turned off, the dog attack. I asked for an investigation. I pleaded. They listened. Then Karen smiled and calmly said, "It sounds like you're experiencing a lot of stress, Mr. Allen. Maybe this neighborhood isn't the right environment for your family. There are other communities with looser requirements." Looser requirements. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stood up, looked at the rest of the board, and said, "If any of you had a child, especially one in a wheelchair, you'd know that what she's doing isn't enforcement. It's warfare." I walked out, but Karen didn't stop. A week later, Lily's wheelchair came back from the school bus with scratches on the wheels and gum under the seat. Then came the incident with the van. Our accessible minivan's rear tire was slashed, only one, and not deep enough to deflate immediately. It blew out while I was driving down the freeway. Thankfully, Lily wasn't with me that day. But the message was clear: you're not welcome here. Still, I stayed. Because I refused to let one cruel woman destroy my daughter's belief in kindness. I refused to teach her that bullies win. So I started preparing. I installed new hidden cameras, this time hardwired and hidden. I adjusted Lily's ramp with tamper alarms. I even built a small safety checklist for her to use when rolling out. Just like a little astronaut before launch. She liked that. It made her feel like she was part of something big, something smart, something safe. But I never expected what came next. Because you never imagine someone would hurt a child directly. Sabotage the very tool she needs to move, to live, to survive. Until the day the brakes failed, the day started like any other, and maybe that was the most dangerous part. When evil disguises itself in routine, it becomes invisible until it strikes. It was a sunny Thursday morning. The sky was crisp, the air soft, and Lily was extra excited because her school's art show was that day. She had been working on her painting all week, an abstract sunset in bold pinks and oranges. "It's what peace looks like," she told me. I remember smiling when she said that. God, I wish I could go back to that moment. I helped her into her chair, handed her the painting tube, and gave her a kiss on the forehead. Double-check the brakes. I said like I always did. She smiled and clicked them down herself. She was proud of being independent. I wheeled her out to the driveway and we waited for the bus. She was humming. I was sipping coffee. It was just normal. Until it wasn't. The school bus pulled up a little late. As usual, the driver, Mr. Leonard, lowered the ramp at the back for Lily's chair. I pushed her into position, then turned to grab her art tube from the bench behind us. Just a second, that's all it took. I heard a shout, a sudden metal-on-metal clank, then wheels spinning. I turned. Lily's chair was moving, by itself, down the slope part of our driveway. I dropped everything and ran, heart jumping into my throat. It wasn't a steep hill, just a shallow grade, but it was enough. The chair rolled over a bump near the sidewalk and turned sharply toward the road. I was screaming her name. Mr. Leonard dropped the ramp remote and bolted. But Lily had already hit the curb. She tumbled. The chair flipped sideways. She screamed. Not a sharp pain scream, but a scared, confused, what's happening to me scream. That kind of scream that no parent should ever hear. I reached her in seconds. My knees hit the pavement. Blood smeared her elbow. Her painting was crushed beneath her. She was crying, shaking. The brakes, she sobbed. I pressed them. I did. Daddy, I did. I looked at the chair. The brakes were down, but they didn't work. They weren't connected. I wheeled the chair back to the garage, heart racing, and flipped it on its side. What I saw turned my stomach. Both brake cables snipped clean. The cuts were fresh. No fraying. No gradual wear. No stretching. Just cold, clean surgical cuts. And worse, the bolts holding the calipers were loosened. Not fallen off. Just unscrewed enough to shift under pressure. It was deliberate, calculated. Mr. Leonard saw it too. He knelt beside me, mouth open. Jesus Christ, he whispered. Someone did this on purpose. I nodded. I couldn't speak. My hands were trembling. We got Lily checked at urgent care. Thankfully, no broken bones, just bruises and a few scrapes. She was shaken, though. Quiet. She didn't speak the entire ride home. She just held my hand tightly, like she was afraid even that might be taken from her next. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the garage, staring at the chair, staring at those cut lines. The violence of it was subtle, but unmistakable. The kind of thing you do when you want to send a message. And then I remembered the camera. One of the new hidden ones I had installed in the flower bed facing the driveway. I rushed to my computer, pulled up the feed. Playback. Tuesday night. No movement. Wednesday afternoon. Nothing. But then, Wednesday, 2:34 a.m. movement. A figure in a hoodie, short, precise steps. Gloved hands. Tools. She crouched near the chair. Clipped something. Used a small wrench. And then she turned her head just a little too far. The hood slipped back briefly. It was Karen. No doubt. Her hair, her glasses, her damn smug posture. She looked at the chair like it was a math problem she had just solved. Then she walked off calmly into the dark, like she had done nothing wrong at all. I sat frozen. I wasn't shocked anymore. I was done being shocked. Now I was furious. I copied the footage. I made 3 backups, one on a USB, one on the cloud, and one in my car's glove box. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called the police. The officer arrived the next morning. I expected them to be skeptical, to downplay it. But once they saw the video, their entire demeanor changed. This is sabotage, he said plainly. This isn't mischief. This is attempted harm. On a child. He filed an official report, promised to escalate it. But he also warned me, these kinds of things get tricky when HOAs are involved. There's always politics. Politics? Someone tried to kill my daughter. There's no politics in that. I didn't tell Lily the full story, just that the police were looking into it. But she knew. Her silence said it all. She stopped using her chair that weekend, asked to stay inside, wouldn't even go to the window if she saw Karen outside. She didn't feel safe in her own home. Neither did I. That was the turning point. That was when I stopped hoping this would blow over. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about rules. This was about power, control, cruelty. And I was done being afraid of it. I was going to fight back, with truth, with evidence, and with everything I had left. The police didn't arrest her that day. They didn't knock on her door, didn't put her in handcuffs, didn't even ask her a single question, not that I knew of. Instead, they filed a report and said they would pass it to the district investigator. And then, nothing. For days. Karen, of course, acted like nothing had happened. She still walked past our house every morning. Still wore that smug little smirk. Still watered her roses with the same routine flick of her wrist, like she wasn't sleeping at night, knowing she had deliberately sabotaged a child's wheelchair. But something changed. She knew I knew, and that shifted the entire atmosphere of the neighborhood. Within 48 hours of my police report, the real retaliation began. It started subtly, like mold under wallpaper. Our mailbox was knocked off its post, just enough to lean, not break. HOA violation notice. Mailbox, structure not up to community standard. Then came a letter warning me that my hedges had grown a quarter-inch over the HOA's approved dimensions. Next, the trash bins. I rolled them out as usual on Tuesday morning. By the time I came home from work, they had been pulled onto the lawn, lids left open, and a citation was waiting for refuse not properly secured. Lily saw that one and asked, "Are we in trouble again?" That cut deeper than anything. I didn't want her to carry this burden. I didn't want her to know that our home, our supposed sanctuary, was turning into a battlefield where every leaf out of place became a weapon. So I tried to take the high road. I emailed the HOA, requested a mediation meeting, attached the police report, included images of the cut break cables, attached time-stamped footage, everything. The response? Mr. Allen, the HOA is not a law enforcement body. If you have issues of a criminal nature, we encourage you to pursue them through the proper legal channels. HOA business must remain strictly within the bounds of community regulations. That was it. They weren't going to help me. Worse, I suspected some of them were in on it. Or at least turning a blind eye because of Karen's influence. She had been HOA president for nearly 7 years, hosted block parties, organized Christmas lights competitions, hand-delivered flower baskets to the board members. She knew how to buy loyalty. I didn't, but I had something else now, resolve. So I went public. I posted the story, everything that had happened, on my personal Facebook page. I didn't tag anyone, didn't name the neighborhood. But I included footage of the break, sabotage, faces blurred, photos of Lily's bruises, a timeline of HOA harassment, and the medical report. It went viral. Within a week, local news stations started reaching out. An advocacy group for children with disabilities shared it on Twitter. I received hundreds of messages, support, outrage, stories from others who had gone through similar HOA harassment. But not all the attention was welcome. Karen retaliated by holding an emergency HOA board meeting. I wasn't invited, but the next day, a printed notice appeared in everyone's mailbox. In light of recent misinformation and online defamation campaigns, the HOA board urges residents to remember that social media is not a court of law. We remain committed to peace, privacy, and order. Slanderous behavior will be met with legal action. Slanderous? She tried to kill my daughter. And now I was the problem? Neighbors began to pull away even more. The ones who once gave polite nods now crossed the street to avoid me. I was branded, not as a father protecting his child, but as a troublemaker. Even Lily could feel it. Kids stopped waving on the bus. At school, she overheard classmates whispering that her dad was causing problems for the neighborhood. One night, she asked me, "Are we bad people?" That shattered me, so I fought harder. I filed for a restraining order. I filed an ADA Americans with Disabilities Act discrimination complaint against the HOA. I contacted a civil rights lawyer. I contacted disability rights advocates. I contacted every single local journalist who had shown interest. But with every push I made, Karen pushed back harder. She accused me of property damage, claimed I had knocked over her garden gnomes. She sent photos of tire marks across her lawn and suggested they came from Lily's wheelchair. She reported me for unauthorized surveillance devices because of my hidden cameras, calling them a security risk to neighbors. I was summoned to a neighborhood arbitration hearing. Not court, not police, just HOA nonsense. They made me sit in a folding chair across from Karen while 3 board members, all her friends, acted as judges. She smiled like it was a game. I asked if they had seen the footage of her cutting my daughter's brakes. They shrugged. That's not HOA business. One said, "We're here to talk about property conduct." Property conduct? The conduct that endangered my child? The system was rotten, and she knew it. She knew that some battles don't need violence. They just need apathy. And she had the neighborhood wrapped in it like plastic wrap around a spoiled casserole. But I kept pushing. One evening, I sat Lily down and asked her if she still wanted to live here, if she wanted to move. She looked at me and said, "Not yet. I want my painting in the art show next month." I smiled, but I also knew if something didn't change before then, she wouldn't be safe. That's when I had an idea. Not revenge, not sabotage, exposure. I contacted a documentary filmmaker from the disability rights group, told him everything, gave him the footage, the timeline, the HOA letters, Lily's story. He agreed. Let's show the world what happens when you give power to people without empathy. We began filming, quietly, carefully, and that's when Karen made her next and final move, the one that changed everything. But I'll get to that soon. Because before that final twist, there was a storm coming, and it was heading straight for us. It happened on a Wednesday, not the kind of day that warns you something terrible is about to happen. No storms, no bad dreams, no strange silences. Just breakfast, cartoons, and a backpack full of colored pencils for Lily's art club. She was finally smiling again. The documentary crew had visited once already. Quietly, discreetly, they interviewed me, took some B-roll footage of Lily drawing in a room. She felt seen. Not pitted, not excluded, just seen. And for the first time in weeks, she started talking about the art show again. "I want to draw something big," she told me. "Like a mountain. Or maybe a dragon." "Why a dragon?" I asked. "Because dragons protect things," she said, "even the little ones." That made me tear up more than I cared to admit. That morning, everything felt like it was slowly stitching itself back together. I walked her to the driveway, like always, helped her into her chair, checked the tires, clicked the brakes. Twice. She even laughed when I did it the second time. "Daddy, I'm not a baby." I know, I smiled, but brakes aren't something we gamble with. We waited for the bus. The sun peeked through the hedges. Birds chirped. Karen was nowhere in sight. For once, peace seemed possible. Then the bus pulled up. The ramp lowered. Lily reached forward to release the brakes so I could guide her onto the lift. And that's when she moved, too quickly. The chair slid forward, faster than it should have. She wasn't even on a slope. I reached out instinctively and caught the handle before she rolled further. But my heart had already skipped. My breath was already gone. Something wasn't right. I wheeled her back slightly, bent down, checked the brakes. They were engaged, but the chair still rolled. I crouched lower. The cable had been cut again, but this time, cleverly. The casing had been stuffed with glue, so the outer housing looked intact, but inside, the brake line was severed, completely disconnected from the actual lever. It was like a trap waiting to spring, and it almost had. A few more seconds, a steeper sidewalk, a distracted moment, and she would have been gone. Just like that. My hand shook. I pulled out my phone, immediately opened the hidden camera feed from a garden bed, and there she was, Karen. Again. This time, it was just after 1 a.m. She approached with gloves, a small toolkit, headlamp on her forehead like a surgeon. She spent 6 minutes at the chair, removed the casing, clipped the line, reassembled it with a false seal. 6 minutes to nearly kill a child. When she left, she paused at our porch, looked up at the camera hidden in the wall lantern, and smiled. She knew. She wanted me to see it, to know that no matter how many cameras I installed, she would always be one step ahead. This wasn't HOA business anymore. This was a war of psychological terror. I didn't call the police this time. I drove straight to the district attorney's office with a flash drive, documents, timestamps, and the previous case number. I showed them everything. This time they listened. They opened an official investigation. Karen was called in for questioning 2 days later. She denied it all. Of course she did. Claimed it was manipulated footage. Said I was targeting her out of spite for enforcing community rules. But this time it didn't work. Because I wasn't the only one who had experienced Karen's quiet tyranny. Once word spread that an actual investigation had opened, others came forward. A single mom down the block who was fined $500 for having a non-standard wreath. An elderly man who was evicted from the HOA board after speaking against Karen in a vote. A teenage boy who said Karen told him not to skateboard past her house because kids like you don't belong in this neighborhood. Piece by piece, her mask cracked, and beneath it, we found exactly who she was. The news broke faster than I imagined. By the time Karen walked out of her interview with the district attorney, a local journalist had already run a segment on the evening news titled, HOA President Under Investigation for Sabotaging Disabled Child's Wheelchair. They blurred Lily's face, but our house was visible. The ramp, the sidewalk where she had nearly rolled into traffic, the chilling clip of Karen's gloved hands working under the cover of darkness. It wasn't a witch hunt. It was evidence. Cold, precise, undeniable. The very next day, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Neighbors who hadn't made eye contact with me in weeks now knocked on our door, awkward apologies in hand. Cupcakes, handwritten cards, offers to help repaint our mailbox, fix our garden, watch Lily while I took meetings. I didn't know whether to thank them or shut the door in their faces. But Lily? She forgave them. In that strange, beautiful way only children can. She invited Sophie over again. And this time, her mom didn't say no. Meanwhile, the legal wheels began to turn. Karen was served a restraining order within 48 hours. She was forced to step down from her position as HOA president. A police escort delivered the notice. I watched from the driveway as she was led to her house, her signature clipboard dangling uselessly in her hand. The same hand that had cut my daughter's brakes. The irony wasn't lost on me. She still didn't say a word to me. Not even a glare. Just silence. But for the first time, it was her silence. Not mine. And that made all the difference. The investigation expanded. They found tools in her garage matching the marks on Lily's wheelchair. A pair of gloves with traces of aluminum and adhesive. And a printed HOA violation letter predated for unauthorized brake adjustments. She had written it before she even tampered with the chair, as if she believed she was above consequence, as if she thought her clipboard gave her the right to harm a child in the name of order. But justice, as slow as it moves, did come. Karen was charged with reckless endangerment, child endangerment, and tampering with medical equipment. She faced fines, probation, and a civil lawsuit from our family. She pleaded not guilty. The trial is still pending. But the damage to her reputation, to her power, was already done. The HOA was restructured. New leadership was elected. Guidelines were rewritten to align with ADA accessibility standards. They even invited me to contribute to the revised bylaws. I declined, not out of spite, but because I wanted nothing to do with systems that had let someone like her rise so high unchecked. I was building something better for Lily. The documentary was released 2 months later. It was titled Silent Sabotage: The Hidden War in Suburbia. It didn't just tell our story. It told the story of dozens of families across the country who had been harassed, fined, intimidated, and excluded by petty HOA dictators hiding behind bylaws. The documentary didn't just go viral. It sparked legislative discussion. Local councils across 3 states began debating stronger protections for disabled families in HOA neighborhoods. One senator even cited Lily's story on the floor, calling it a wake-up call to the silent suffering of countless children. Lily watched it on TV. Curled up next to me on the couch, she squeezed my hand. "I'm not scared anymore," she whispered. Neither was I. But it hadn't come without a price. She still flinched when wheels rolled too fast. Still double-checked her brakes 5 times before going anywhere. Still hesitated at the top of even the smallest ramp. Healing isn't linear, but it had begun. And with it came hope. Her art piece, the one she worked on for the show, was finally completed. It wasn't a mountain. It wasn't a dragon. It was us. A father holding his daughter's wheelchair from behind, both looking out over a stormy landscape. In the distance, rays of light pierced through clouds. At the bottom, in bright red paint, she wrote, "I'm still rolling." When I saw it, I cried. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Not anymore. We didn't move. Everyone expected us to. Even after Karen was gone and the HOA changed leadership, neighbors would ask cautiously, "Are you planning to sell?" As if our story had left a permanent stain on the neighborhood. But no, we stayed. Because leaving would have meant she won. And we weren't victims anymore. We were survivors. More than that, we were witnesses to what happens when people stay silent too long. And now, silence wasn't an option anymore. Lily's painting was framed in the school lobby for the rest of the year. Her art teacher submitted it to a regional competition. It won first prize in her age category. Not because it was the most polished or technically perfect, but because it had truth. You could feel it. You could see the pain, the fear, the strength, and the quiet defiance of a little girl who refused to stop rolling forward. In interviews, they asked me if I forgave Karen. And the honest answer is no, not yet, maybe not ever. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes forgiveness is simply choosing not to carry the poison she tried to feed us. What I do carry is the lesson that safety is not just ramps and regulations. It's knowing that your child matters as much as anyone else's, that systems of power, no matter how polished or procedural, can become monstrous when left in the hands of people without empathy. And maybe most of all, that the fight is never about just one incident. It's about stopping the next one. There were nights I still replayed the sound of her wheels sliding too fast, the screech of rubber, the fear in her voice. But those memories began to fade, slowly, naturally, like bruises fading under skin. In their place, new ones took hold. Lily rolling freely across the park with Sophie, beside her, laughing in the wind. Neighbors helping me build a permanent curved ramp, one she helped design herself. A little boy from down the street riding his scooter to our porch and asking Lily if she wanted to draw dragons with sidewalk chalk. That's how healing looks. Messy, real, earned. We installed motion sensor lights, not out of fear, but as a reminder that no one hides in the dark anymore. I donated her old wheelchair to a shelter for disabled kids fleeing domestic abuse. She insisted on attaching a note to it. It gets better. I promise. Karen moved out before the trial began. Sold her house. Disappeared. No goodbye. No apology. Good riddance. I heard she relocated to a gated community out of state. One without an HOA. Fitting in its own way. Let her live where no one has to pretend she's in charge. Meanwhile, I was asked to speak at a disability rights conference. I told our story, raw, unedited, the whole terrifying, beautiful, maddening journey. And when I finished, I looked out at the crowd and said, she cut the brakes to teach us a lesson, but we're the ones who learned something far more important. When you fight for your child, you don't fight alone. That earned a standing ovation. But what really mattered to me happened later that night when Lily tugged on my sleeve and asked, do you think dragons ever get tired? I knelt beside her and said, all the time, but they keep going anyway. That's what makes them dragons. She grinned. Good, because I'm not done rolling yet. And that's the truth of it. She's still rolling, still rising, still daring the world to try and stop her. And me, I'm walking behind, holding the handle, eyes forward, always watching, always ready, always proud. Because if this story taught me anything, it's this: they tried to break her. They failed. And now, she's unstoppable. If this story moved you, if you believe every child deserves safety, dignity, and access, then don't just watch, stand with us. Hit that like button if you believe justice should never be optional. Subscribe to HOA Denied Access for more true, emotional, and hard-hitting stories that expose the silent battles families like ours face every day. And share this video with someone who needs to know. Power doesn't protect you. Courage does. Because on this channel, we don't stay silent, we don't back down, and we never get denied again.